In Virginia, for example, with a large Catholic and Anglican population, the holiday thrived, and Virginia became the birthplace of American Halloween. Halloween parties featuring ghost stories and bobbing for apples were popular in Virginia and in other southern colonies.
All of the colonies believed in witchcraft and magic and the occult. Magic was part of life. And that's the element you need to make sure that Halloween is going to take root again. It's the belief that there is a spirit world.
Some of the most popular Halloween games involved divination, predicting one's future, especially one's romantic prospects. For example, women would look for their future husband's face to appear in foods cooked in a fire. In another popular divination game, a young girl would leave a wet blouse out to dry overnight. While she slept, the man she would marry would come and turn one of the sleeves, or so the superstition went. Divination games were also favorites at big Halloween events called play parties, which were becoming very popular in the early 1800s.
Play parties had a lot of the same elements that we recognize as Halloween today. There were nuts and apples, carved pumpkins, they were community gatherings, there were ghost stories. All those things you can find in a contemporary Halloween or a Halloween of the 20th century.
So, Virginia basically is the founding place for Halloween in America. And I'm betting this was after, the witch trials and all that stuff, and Salem, or, it just moved on down there, and they just had they gave their people more freedom to do this stuff. But, excuse me. So, I know we're not doing a lot of talking, but we just felt like this was the best way to get it. And of course, we're not playing the entire documentary. There's no way I would put anybody through this. So we're just taking short little clips and putting it with what we're talking about. Now, I don't know how many people know the true story of the jack-o'-lantern. And some people just think, oh, it's just a
jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah. Some people just think, oh, it's just a fun thing to do. Some people think, well, they just did it. It was something they did in, Ireland. They actually used turnips instead of pumpkins. But when they came to America and they migrated, it was easier to carve pumpkins than turnips. And of course, they were bigger. But here is the actual history of the jack-o'-lantern. It says, the jack-o'-lantern is the festival light for Halloween and is the ancient symbol of a damned soul. Originally, the Irish would carve out turnips or beets as lanterns as representation of the souls of the dead or goblins freed from the dead. When the Irish migrated to America, they could not find any turnips to carve into jack-o'-lanterns, but they did find an abundance of pumpkins. Pumpkins seem to be a suitable substitute for the turnips, and pumpkins have been an essential part of Halloween celebration ever since. We're putting out damned souls when we carve pumpkins. I never knew that. I carved pumpkins. I just thought it was a fun thing to do when I was a kid, and I had no idea till 2 or 3 years ago when Jeremy and I got together. I had no idea what it really stood for, and it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh my gosh! So I was just like, here, Satan, here, damned souls, come to my house. That's kind of how I felt.
And that's what it is. A jack-o'-lantern is supposed to be a spiritual version of a lighthouse for the dead.
Yeah. So, we're going to, so that's about the jack-o'-lantern. Not a lot of people know about that. I didn't know about it. But, what we're doing here, is we're exposing the truth about Halloween. We're telling you, this is what the history of it is. Now, people have free will. Are you going to let your kids dress up in, funny costumes and go get trick-or-treating? That's your decision. I did it as a kid, but looking now, I kind of almost wish maybe I didn't, even though I look back and I had fun. It was wonderful. We went out, we had fun, and, but just knowing the knowledge now, knowing the truth about Halloween, it does worry me that maybe we were exposed to stuff we shouldn't have been exposed to. But we have free will. you know, we have our own convictions, what the Lord convicts us on, and so you have to make your own decision on this. We're just putting the information out there for you to know the truth about Halloween. So we're going to move on, and the next two clips are about how Halloween became more about children, and how the children took the Halloween out into the streets, and how they actually started pulling pranks. People were being murdered by children. Children were burning houses down and stuff. And how one town in Anoka, Minnesota, created a big Halloween celebration to stop the violence, vandalism, criminal mischief that children were doing, and inevitably turned into trick-or-treat as we know it today nationwide. So we're going to play these two clips, and then we'll take a break. And we're almost done for our show tonight, but it's been great that you've stuck around, and you've made yourself knowledgeable about the truth about Halloween.
Long-time Irish Halloween customs didn't quite fit. They were adapted. For example, the American pumpkin proved much easier to carve into jack-o'-lanterns than the turnip
sorry,
used
we're
in
gonna
Ireland.
skip that since we talked about
Halloween parties for adults were fading away, and events for kids took prominence. Children took Halloween out of the home and into the neighborhood. But with children let loose came a resurgence of the dark side that had long bedeviled the holiday: pranks and vandalism. In the 1930s in Queens, New York, for example, young vandals smashed 1,000 windows on Halloween night. At times, the pranks even turned deadly. Halloween was getting out of control, and communities had to find ways to rein it in. Starting in the 1920s, the little town of Anoka, Minnesota, addressed this problem head-on by throwing the country's first big civic Halloween parade. Storyteller Garrison Keeler remembered what it was like to grow up in the Halloween capital of the world.
There was a big granite chip mosaic on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Main Street that said, Anoka, Minnesota, Halloween capital of the world, and a black witch in the center of it. So there was proof. When you're a little child, you take seriously what grown people tell you, especially if it's pretty extravagant. And so I believed this without any question, that somehow out of the entire world, Anoka, Minnesota, had been chosen to be the capital.
So Anoka, Minnesota is the Halloween capital of the world, and they have a little marker on the street of their town that says Halloween capital of the world with a little witch. So they've branded themselves as a pagan town. That's the little unnerving. So we're just gonna change out the camera, and we'll be right back.